So I think at this point it's obvious that I may not be the biggest Edmonton Oilers fan on the block. You know, growing up in BC just kind of does that to ya. But in this video, we're piggybacking off of some of the other comments we have seen about the Oilers and just opening up another conversation, because when it comes to the guys that need contracts for 2025 and beyond, there is a pretty particular group of them. We had made a video a few days ago talking about how Jeff Skinner's contract goes on till the end of the season. You had Ryan McLeod, who is, of course, no longer on the Oilers, but his contract went on till the end of next season. Leon Draisaitl is the big one. Is he going to go to San Jose? Who really knows? And then there is one Evan Bouchard on D. And we have made a few videos talking about Bouchard. It's been kind of a, let's just say, sporadic series here and there with this player and this YouTube channel. Because if you go as far back as the 2018 draft, you'll find videos on this channel of me saying that Evan Bouchard was a player that I didn't think my Vancouver Canucks should go out there and draft. I mean, this was a big deal back then. Concerns with Evan Bouchard. The guy was slow, the guy wasn't all too engaged defensively, and his back-checking wasn't fantastic. There was a lot wrong with Bouchard, in my opinion at least, heading into that 2018 draft. But he was taken by Edmonton, he eventually worked himself out, and I ended up making the I was so wrong about Evan Bouchard video 3 times over the course of the next few years. And, you know, it always goes out there and gets some hits, so I'm happy to provide my own solace every once in a while. But of course, when it comes to Bouchard, he has been a great player for the Edmonton Oilers. His overall offensive production is something that I don't think many people actually saw coming, especially this early on. Bouchard is 24 years old, and he's making $3.9 million a year till the end of this upcoming season. And he's coming off a year where he was literally a point-per-game guy. 82 points, 81 games played, 18 goals, 64 assists. He added on 32 points in 25 playoff games on top of that. He has been a monster. And I want to say that this stretch of Bouchard just terrorizing teams offensively began in the 2023 NHL playoffs. There, he had 17 points in 12 games, and hadn't really looked back ever since. The guy has been a staple on the Oilers' power play. You can say that he's piggybacking off of McDavid, you can say he's piggybacking off of Draisaitl, but realistically, if Bouchard wasn't on this team, if it was any other bum going out there and trying to make these passes, who knows if Draisaitl and McDavid even have as many points as they do, who really knows? But it's because of this prosperity on the blue line that the Evan Bouchard contract situation is getting pretty interesting. You see, right now, Evan Bouchard has a ton of leverage. If he was to go out there and sign a contract today, you could probably bet it's in the maybe $9-ish million range, 8 years long. The Oilers could definitely give Bouchard some sort of a Cale Makar, Quinn Hughes kind of deal. Heck, not even Quinn Hughes. That guy's making 7 point whatever. But something in the $8-9+ million range would be appropriate when you consider the cap rising and the percentage of the cap that these players could take up. But with that in mind, it doesn't seem like we're going to get that kind of an outcome anytime soon. There have already been reports saying that Evan Bouchard and the Oilers are not going to rush into an extension. They are going to wait. And in this video, I wanted to talk about the risk that is present in that idea, and what exactly this could mean long term. To help us out, let's go over onto an article published by Jim Parsons on the Hockey News. This is a perspective saying that the Oilers should take their time with this Evan Bouchard extension. The record-breaking defenseman Evan Bouchard had an unreal season and postseason for the Oilers, but with elements like McDavid and Draisaitl's future deals at play, the Oilers may be wise to show patience. Parsons writes here that the franchise faces a critical juncture in managing its roster, with contract extensions for key players such as Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid taking precedence. Mild concerns about one or both eventually leaving is weighing on the fanbase. Amidst these high-stakes negotiations, Bouchard's contract situation looms, somewhat in the background. Bouchard is a player the Oilers would of course want to keep. He became eligible to sign a new deal on July 1st and is under contract for the 24-25 season with a $3.9 million cap hit. He is set to becoming an RFA next summer, and because Bouchard's 23-24 was nothing short of spectacular, the cost to re-sign him will skyrocket. He recorded 82 points and he did all the crazy stuff about him. I mean, he set the assist record for most assists by a defenseman in a single playoffs with 26, so he's definitely pretty good. The article then brings up the tweet made by Daniel Nugent-Bowman, which discusses the potential situation here. I'm told it's unlikely the Oilers and Bouchard will discuss an extension this summer. Edmonton has more pressing things to address, like their GM, Draisaitl, and McDavid, and Bouchard has a high likelihood of building off his Norris 5th place and starring in the playoffs. So ultimately, this is a risk because for Evan Bouchard, if he goes out there and has yet another 80, maybe a 90-point season, then that dollar amount that he's going to get in his next contract is not going to get any lower. It is just going to continue getting higher. And for the Oilers, they may be on the receiving end of a few extra cap dollars that they may otherwise not need to spend if they were to sign him right now. That possibility is always going to be there. These players are young enough to justify that idea. 24, 25 years old, 23, some of them even, from that 2018 draft. It's going to be pretty easy for them to still continue and progress. But for Evan Bouchard, his right now, which you could say isn't even his peak, is already so good. Like, my goodness, who goes out there and ties Paul Coffey for assists in a playoff run? But of course, if the reality comes and goes that Evan Bouchard actually doesn't hold up his end of the bargain, if he actually declines, if Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl find ways to create offense without relying on Bouchard, then okay, if he gets like a 70, 60-point season next season, then he may actually have a lower dollar amount cost. So it is kind of a risk for both sides here, but based off of the way this Oilers team is oiled up, and based off of how Bouchard has played, and based off of the additions that they made, I would not be surprised if Bouchard had even more points next year. It's just, for Edmonton, I guess if you wanted to say, hey, they're not really worried about however much money they're going to pay Bouchard, they're going to have to pay him 10, 11 million, who cares? They don't. They got to focus on Draisaitl, McDavid, and their GM first. Okay, honestly, I do understand that perspective. It does make sense if you wanted to label out the hierarchy of what the Oilers should be focusing on at this point in time. But the article does write at the bottom here that as an RFA, Evan Bouchard does not have all the leverage. He cannot walk if he doesn't like the Oilers' next offer. The best he can do after the Oilers qualify him at $4.3 million is file for arbitration next June. It's not a process teams and players like, but it brings an element of certainty. Most players sign contracts before the arbitration deadline, and there's no reason to think either side wants to go there. The other potential risk is an offer sheet, but it isn't really much of a risk here, Parsons writes. Another NHL team will have to come in higher than $11.4 million to convince Bouchard to leave. Even if they were to do it, he could still say no and not sign it. Should a team offer anywhere lower or underneath that, the Oilers will simply match it. Not matching means the Oilers would get 4 first-round picks as compensation. To say the least, the likelihood of an offer sheet is extremely low. Parsons then concludes here that finally, waiting for the Oilers allows them to take care of McDavid and Draisaitl, set the precedent that the best players are looking to stay, and then have Bouchard follow suit. To know where this team is at after another all-in season, but also where it's headed when the top players make their decisions, are critical factors when determining what to do with Bouchard. So, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about Evan Bouchard and the potential of his contract signing taking place next year. Not now, but after a very long while. What are your thoughts on the order as to where things should go? Could you just do Bouchard right now? Say, alright, sorry, McDavid, Draisaitl, we'll get to you later, but we have an easier, more accessible time in getting this contract done right now, and we could probably get him for a bit cheaper than if we waited for next year. Is that perspective something that you agree with, or do you think all the other stuff is way more important and thus should be focused on instead? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the Evan Bouchard contract situation and whether or not you do think this is a risk like I do. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.